Hello and welcome to the Astro Garden, a place for astrologers to chat all things astro. I'm your host Janessa of By Jove Astrology. Thanks for tuning in. Hi there. Welcome to another episode of the Astro Garden. This time around, I'm trying something new. I'm recording solo, and I'm just going to start sharing more of my thoughts about astrology, the transits, and yeah, just astrology in general. So today it's August 7th that I'm recording this, 2024. It's Mercury's day. Today Mercury is crossing paths with Venus in Virgo. Mercury is retrograde, and will retrograde back into Leo shortly. But today they're meeting in the sky. Venus is, going direct, so she's marching on through Virgo right now. But yeah, having a little chat with Mercury on her way, on her path, while Mercury is on his way back to, pick up any pieces that he left behind in Leo. So I wanted to take some time today just to talk about Jupiter and Gemini. I have really been loving this transit. Obviously I want to talk about Jupiter all the time. my business name is By Jove Astro. I'm definitely partial to Jupiter as my chart ruler, and really as that's really where I look to in my chart for inspiration. I have a lot of Libra placements, and I have a lot of Scorpio placements, and then I have Jupiter in Aries, and it's like one of my only planets that's not one of the few that's not in detriment or in fall. So it doesn't have any dignity, which is also kind of freeing because it doesn't have rules really put on it. So I really look to Jupiter in Aries in my chart as this symbol of freedom, and where I can dig into to expand myself in ways that are unbound from other people or just free from any kinds of limitations or restrictions. I say that, but then I do have Saturn in the 10th house that is, trining Jupiter. So, but it's still, Jupiter in my chart finds a way to kind of break free from that. And also has a trine from Uranus that helps push that out of Saturn's way. So yeah, as a Pisces rising now, Jupiter has been transiting my 4th house since May of this year of 2024. And he'll be there until he moves into Cancer next June. Which I know a lot of astrologers are really excited about, and I am too. But Jupiter in Gemini is in its fall. It's where, or it's in its detriment. Sorry, language. Trying to be specific as possible. But it's in its detriment because it's in its home sign when it's in Sagittarius, which is opposite of Gemini. Sagittarius is a sign that Jupiter rules, so it's very comfortable there. He can do what he likes there in the way that he likes. But when Jupiter is in Gemini, he's playing by Mercury's rules. So which, is the opposite of Jupiter if we're talking about a binary. Where Jupiter likes to be big and be about the big picture, Mercury is all about the details and like really getting into the weeds of things. So, you could look at this traditionally, you would look at this as like a negative. I am trying to move away from using those terms. I think if we're depending on how you want to look at things, yes, it can mean things might be less beneficial with Jupiter and Gemini, depending on the chart of the person and the moment and all of the other things going on, the ecosystem that it's living in. But we can also, just think about Jupiter in general as like bringing blessings to wherever he is transiting. And the blessings just might not look like what we typically associate with a blessing. Like, there's a lot of things, going on behind the scenes at all times. And like a lot of times Jupiter, I find, just acts as like a silver lining where it's kind of like making things less bad than they could have been. So sometimes it's hard to appreciate that when we're talking about Jupiter. And that's something that my teacher has always mentioned to Adam Ellen Boss at Nightlight Astrology, is like that silver lining, especially if Jupiter's transiting like a dark house for you, or a house that is not visible from the first house. So it might just be that he's working his magic behind the scenes and, preventing the worst outcome from happening, which, doesn't always feel great when something bad happens. I don't think it's really helpful sometimes to hear that, like, well, it could have been worse, or at least it's not this that happened. When somebody's having a hard time, that doesn't really always help. Sometimes it can, but I find that that's kind of dismissive. So yeah, I guess that's context to say that I'm speaking of my own experience, from my own experience today with Jupiter in Gemini. Despite it being in detriment, it being a really nice transit for me so far. As my ascendant ruler, I've felt a lot more energetic and motivated with Jupiter going into Gemini. Being in Taurus, it was just kind of like a slow plod, thinking of like a hooved animal just slowly plodding along. And now that we're into Gemini, like the energy level is higher and faster, which I really appreciate. I have Mars in Libra, so, which is its fall. So, or I'm sorry, that's in detriment again. But anyway, so motivation and energy levels have always been something that I've struggled with. I have a lot of ideas and things I like to do, and I'm not like a lazy person by any means, but yeah, so my energy levels have been higher, I would say, with Jupiter and Gemini, which I really am enjoying. Saturn also transiting my first has made it be, made this like really big focus on, those first house things of self and who you are. I'm also in a first house year, so there's just like a really big emphasis right now on who I am, who I'm becoming, and it's been very transformative. Even just like, there's mostly the internal stuff, but even like wanting to make changes to my body, like losing weight in a healthy way, and improving my nutrition, diet and exercise, and like clothes. Trying to find like, what is my style? Okay, I've had like 3 kids now, and kind of redefining what I like to wear and how I like to be seen. My hair has shifted drastically in the last year or so. I've gone from having long hair for a really long time to like pretty short. So I've been kind of experimenting with that, and I feel like I'm slowly finding this new self under there, or like uncovering this new self. So yeah, I think some of the keywords I've been working with Jupiter and Gemini, like the first one that came to mind is capacity. So having Jupiter in the 4th house of like home and family and ancestry has really, and also just like the foundations of like who I am and my just my foundations, my like root has been really helpful in terms of building capacity, like not just to be more productive, in like producing things, but for like handling difficulty, for being a parent. That's been really big. It's like having more patience and space to hold for my kids and my husband, and and then there is this other side of it too, of being able to produce more work and to take on more in terms of like activities or projects I'd like to be participating in. My kids are getting a little bit older. My youngest is about to turn 3 in about 2 weeks. And with that, it gets a little bit easier. I know there's always hard days, and like right now my oldest is homesick. So I'm like holed up in my bedroom recording this. But so there's always like difficult things, but it's getting easier in terms of like being able to take on all 3 kids for activities, and like giving my husband a break, or him giving me a break for us to like explore activities we want to on the weekends or in the evenings, not being so tied to nap schedules and early bedtimes. We're kind of starting to see this next chapter of parenting open before us. We're not quite there, we've got diapers and potty training and stuff, in the day to day, but we can like almost taste it. The middle child is getting ready. He has 1 more year. He's about to start pre-K at a new school. And so he'll be in kindergarten next year. And, that's going to free up a lot of financial resources for us. Living in America and paying childcare bills is outrageous. So if you've gone through that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But yeah, it's just kind of like seeing like this potential and this capacity, and like capacity being a really big key word. Like how much can I hold, and how can I have more spaciousness while I'm holding it, versus just being overwhelmed and stressed out and not having very much fun. I'm having more fun now with Jupiter and Gemini. There's like this lightness that it being an air sign, I think brings, and also, Mercury just kind of like keeps it moving. We're not stuck in the mud or, um, you know, feeling heavy like in Taurus. There were really good things about Jupiter and Taurus too. I'm not dissing that, but I'm really enjoying like the buoyancy of Jupiter and Gemini. And the other keyword I've been thinking of is paradox. And I've, been kind of like working with this word probably since this spring. And now I keep hearing it all over. I think I've heard like Sam Reynolds reference paradox in reference to Jupiter and Gemini. And I know I've heard Britten LaRue speak about paradox. And I think it's like my new word for a while now, or for the foreseeable future. It's the idea of like holding two separate ideas, or opposite, what we would say opposite ideas, and like knowing that they're both true has been like, it's so simple, but it's been like mind blowing for real. And I don't know that I always realized that about myself until more recently, that I do this a lot, and I have done this a lot, as a Pisces rising. I think the mutables really get the paradox, especially the Mercury ruled mutables, but yeah, like holding two opposite truths and knowing that they can both be true is just kind of crazy, right? Like, I think I was reflecting on because I feel like my thinking has shifted a lot. I've had Uranus transiting the third house, and it's kind of really like the third house has so many connotations, it can be very literal, like siblings and in-laws, and your like day to day and like community. And that's kind of where I have been seeing a lot of the transits to Taurus and the third house have been playing out. But as I'm reflecting now, I think actually the biggest takeaway is that other meaning of the third house, which can literally be like how we think. And I'm skipping over plenty of others. It's the moon to joy. There's all kinds of like mystical goodness in the third house, but that how we think is something I really overlooked and kind of like didn't dismiss, but like just unaware of until journaling earlier this week on the new moon, and thinking about how my how I think has been totally overhauled with Uranus there, and realizing like I have a lot more room for paradox in that. And like one of the biggest events I can think of in my more recent life where my thinking shifted was during the uprising here in Minneapolis after the murder of George Floyd. And just kind of coming shockingly to myself to the terms with like what I think about policing in America, and just America in general. It felt like the wool had been pulled from my eyes. I feel like I'm messing up that saying, but it was like this revealing to me of what was underneath. It was this big unveiling for me. I felt like I was finally seeing the truth for the first time. And I wasn't someone that I would say was naive to the issues. I had worked in nonprofits for most of my career at that point, doing direct service for all kinds of communities in Minneapolis. And yeah, so I was not naive to the issues. I think it revealed to me how deeply seated they were, and how much work there really was to be done, and also revealed to me further how much the Democrats, I guess if we're speaking in terms like that, or like, I hate to even use like both sides because they're just, I don't even know. I'm not going to get into politics that much. But just how complicit like these liberal leaning institutions were in everything that's going on. And it just felt like, okay, now I see that it's beyond parties, it's beyond I would still it goes deeper, and it's kind of at the core of like what America is. And it was like mind blown. I learned a lot. And that was like one of the biggest shifts in my thinking, is like seeing that how others are complicit and not necessarily always taking responsibility for that, and how ugly that can be, when people you think, or institutions you think are there to help, are actually just as much like exacerbating the problem. Maybe there were good intentions to start, maybe there weren't. I still have some prejudices about politics, and you could argue that the other side is worse. But I think a big part of the past few years for me has been looking at how I am complicit in my own suffering, and I think that applies to everyone and to everything, and how it's not unique to me. So I'm rambling. But anyway, that was a big shift. And it became like, this new way of thinking, and holding these multiple truths of like how things really are and how we wish they were, and how some people experience the world, and how that can be true. It's their experience, and how I experience the world, and that it might be very different, but it's also true. So just seeing so much of like the black and whiteness, I think, that we all experience on social media, and in our social groups and in our communities, where people are choosing sides and not willing to be understanding of the other. And also, feeling a lot of that. I am a human being. I definitely have opinions, and also having like this really deep compassion for people with opposite views from mine, despite what I might find disgusting. So yeah, I think that was like this light bulb moment. And, you know, the sun was in Gemini when that all happened. And it wasn't overnight, you know, it was kind of like a process and a lot of like grieving of like, how did I misunderstand the world so much for so much of my life happening at the same time. So yeah, very interesting. But yeah, back to the paradox keyword, like just reflecting on my life, I've just experienced this so much. And one of like the things that's come up for me is how I exist in different groups. And you know, I've been working with Britten LaRue's work now for a while. I went to her workshop for Unshaming the Signs this past weekend in Minneapolis. It was amazing. I cannot recommend her work enough if you're curious. She has her new book, Living Astrology, out. Came out this past March. And it's really about like, you know, embracing all of the signs of the zodiac as part of you. You know, we get really caught up in our placements and, oh, I'm a Scorpio, or oh, I'm a Pisces. But really, we do have all of the signs in our birth charts, and we can live into those energies whenever we want to. But especially, you know, if you want to go with where the sun is at the moment, like living into Leo right now has been really cool. So I recommend that. But anyway, in this 2-hour workshop on shame, really fun Saturday. I genuinely had fun. But yeah, it's maybe not how others would like to spend their Saturday. You know, some of the things coming up for me around shame, even just going to this workshop, is like a lot of shame around where I fit in. And this is like so solar, I feel like, too, with like, what is my, you know, it's tied to questions of like purpose, it's tied to questions of like identity. So yeah, like my whole life, I think a theme has been, I don't really fit into any one group. And like now I'm starting to see that's not a bad thing. But like, it's really hard in reality, right? Like, I mean, starting out as like a young girl, I was very much a tomboy. You know, I think it was in kindergarten. It might have been right before kindergarten. I made my mom chop off all my hair. And I wanted, you know, quote unquote, a boy haircut because I didn't want her to do my hair every day. And it was too much fuss. And I wanted to spend my time playing outside and not getting my hair done. Which was great. You know, I was just like being myself and focusing on what I wanted to do. And, you know, bless my mom for accepting that and just letting me do it. But, you know, how that translated to childhood is that I, you know, had a lot of friends who were boys, or at recess, like I have just such distinct memories of playing with the boys because they wanted to play the things I wanted to play, you know, like kickball or competitive type sports, very physical. And the girls were more into, I don't know, just like socializing. And, you know, I don't think this is true everywhere. I'm not trying to feed into any more like stereotypes, but this is my experience. So I distinctly remember always trying to get the girls to play with us and going to them and saying, hey, do you guys want to play kickball? We need more people. And them kind of like maybe sometimes would play, but also we're like, no, you guys play too rough. We don't like that. So, but then also like, you know, being with the boys and being the only girl was also kind of like odd and like not feeling comfortable. And, you know, facing the same like, but reversed criticism from them that like you're just a girl and you can't do things as good as us, which I was always determined to prove wrong. So just like straddling those worlds from like a young age, that's like a really good example of like how I feel like I've always lived in a paradox, and also experienced shame for that. Like, you know, when you live in that world, you don't belong in either, and then yeah, you get it from all sides. So you're not being a girl in the right way, and you're not being, you know, you're not a boy. So yeah, I mean, there's other stories I could tell of like growing up Catholic and, you know, being sorted to practice our first communion and the nun putting me in the boy line because she thought I was a boy. Which, you know, upset me at the time, but also like did not give enough of a fuck to grow my hair out again. So good for me. But yeah. And then, you know, later in life, I was just laughing to myself this morning, thinking about my high school friends and how we were all very mutable. Like we were in this like paradoxical space. Like, and now I know that they all have mutable placements. The one that I still am closest with is like a Virgo rising, and it just makes so much sense because we were just this little group that really floated between all of the groups. We were athletes. We did a lot of sports. Some of us like, you know, all year round, and we're pretty good at sports. And it was a small school, so there was a lot of opportunity to participate in different things. But we also were band nerds and really into band and like studying music, and like we didn't just like participate, we were like really into it. And then we were also like nerds, like we really worked hard at school and you know, we're good at that and made sure we had good grades, and we kept our noses pretty clean. We were not having parties or drinking or doing anything like the quote unquote fun. We had a lot of fun. We made our own fun, but we were all pretty tame, and some of us from like very religious backgrounds. So we behaved in that way. But yeah, how we kind of like, I wouldn't have called us nerds either. Like if we're talking the spectrum of popularity in high school, it was like we were kind of in the middle. We thought we were, you know, we knew we were nerds, but we thought we were cool enough. And yeah, we just straddled the lines for like a lot of different groups and had a lot of other groups that we could come and go from and fit in with. So another just very mutable experience. And then I got to college, and like a true mutable, I double majored. I had studied German in high school, and that allowed me to get a scholarship to study it in college. And you know, it was something I liked to learn. I have a lot of ninth house placements, so I'm like very much into learning other languages. I have Mercury there. But then I also it wasn't my passion per se. Like German happened to be, we had two choices in high school. It was German or Spanish. German would allow me to take college level classes during high school. And it also made it so that I could go on a German trip during high school. So like going to Europe, and there was like no way I could not choose to do that also with my many ninth house placements. Like I needed to take German. I don't really have much German heritage. I think there's maybe some, but it's not something I like feel closely to or feel close to. But anyway, so I took German and excelled at it and was able to get this scholarship, which in turn then allowed me to study something else that I wanted to really study, which was art, like fine art. So I double majored in German and fine art. And it was like just so, it was a great college experience in that I accomplished what I set out to do. I double majored. I got to study abroad for a year. I graduated early, so I got out of there with less loans. I did all the things that I wanted to accomplish, but it was tough in terms of like fitting in. There was in the German department this very academic group of people who a lot of had grown up speaking German already. I think it probably also says something about their financial status or economic status when I say that too. So there was like this really big disconnect, and I felt like I never fit in with that group. It was a little bit, it just felt very snobby to me, and what I liked about it was that it was classical, like it was very traditional college. I have tendencies to that, again, ninth house placements. I have a draw to that, but I couldn't allow myself to really go there. I just, I didn't feel like I belonged. Just coming from the background that I had and knowing that like I can't commit to one thing and one way of being. It never worked. And then at the same time, I was an art major and loved it. I loved my art class experiences in that I had really cool teachers, and it allowed me to explore ideas I was learning in like my German literature classes and philosophy, and it was a really good experience. And I also never could commit to the art crowd, and I couldn't look the part or make myself quite look the part. There's just all of these like identities that we give ourselves, especially when we're growing up. But I would still wear my little University of Minnesota hoodie, and because it's what I was comfortable in. And, I'm going to college. It's not a fashion show every day, at least from my perspective. But I couldn't just like give in to like the art student look either. So, and like the lifestyle that kind of comes with that, or has in some spaces. So again, I just felt like I was drifting and didn't belong in either group. And, having a lot of shame around that, like really struggling at art class with my hoodie on, like, I'm not a real artist because I can't make myself just give into this like aesthetic or lifestyle. And then having the same experience when I go to my German classes, being like, I am not this like wealthy, inherited wealth, like academic person, where I can just take trips all the time and have grown up speaking a second language in a second European language. So yeah, lots of shame. And it's interesting now to be able to like call it that. And those themes have carried out in so many other ways in my life. Whether it's different groups of friends or, people always feeling like I don't fit in because I can't commit to like one thing. And now I'm realizing like, no, that is the same in the way, like getting it back to paradox. It's like, that is also like my greatest strength, right? Is like being able to embrace all these things and like know that, yeah, I will never be X and I will never be Y, but like somehow I'm Z. And I don't know if this is making any sense, but embracing all the things and like holding them and like owning it and like loving it is kind of where I see my path forward. It's also interesting because I feel like astrology for me has become this thing where I can do that. I think that's why I love it so much, is that it is a science and it is an art, and it doesn't have to be like this one thing. Like there's so many ways of doing astrology and being an astrologer. Like I don't know if my final calling is technically any kind of title of astrologer. Right now I'm just keeping the artist as my, what I am, my whatever I'm calling myself, which, I think it's clear I don't like labels, but at this point in the conversation, but there's so much room in astrology. It's like a medium with which to do stuff, all kinds of stuff, and I'm really happy to be here doing it. So I feel like this is kind of wrapping up my story time and my rambling. But yeah, Jupiter and Gemini, it's like holding the opposite truths and like living into the paradox and seeing the paradox as the blessing. And like I hope as people, as like, society, that word, I hope we can like start to see the beauty in that. I think it's the way forward. I think it's been missing for a long time. And maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm late to the game. I am. I know I am. But I hope that I can help others start to see that and embrace that and living into it, because we're not going to get anywhere with just being black and white, and there's having only one right way to be something or do something. So yeah, that's my sharing today. Thank you for listening. If you've stuck with me through this episode, I'm going to be experimenting more with this format and seeing where it takes me. So thank you. I hope you have a great day, and yeah, sending you lots of paradoxical big love. For more information about my work, you can find me at By Jove Astro on Instagram, at By Jove Astrology on Twitter, and the best place to find me of all is at my website, byjoveastrology.com.